Now, This Week in Texoma.
Welcome to the program. We're visiting today with Senator Don Barrington, Republican of Lawton, representing District 31. We're going to talk about some of the things that have been going on at the state legislature this session. If you've been paying any attention at all to the news, you know that the big thing has been the budget, and so we know you guys have been tackling that. Appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today,
Yes,
Senator
appreciate
Barrington.
you inviting me out to visit with you, David.
You bet. Let's talk about this this budget whole. Before we talked a little bit before we taped today, and you said it's been the most challenging year that you've had since you've been up there in the legislature.
That's correct. This has probably been one of the more unsettling sessions that I've participated in, and it's due to the budget crisis that we have here in Oklahoma. And of course, Oklahoma being an energy state, with the drop in the oil and gas prices has really hurt us bad. But you know, Oklahomans are resilient, and we've been through some tough times in the past, dealing with natural disasters as well as some budget shortfalls and some other things. But we bounce back. We'll adjust and bounce back. The challenge now is to come up with a budget before the end of session, right, and hopefully keep our priorities whole and as harmless as possible with them.
I know that the numbers have been coming in. We've had a couple of the revenue failures that have already been declared this year that have impacted cuts to this the current fiscal year budget.
Right.
And then I don't know if there's another forecast for that coming up again, where agencies might have to take it again, or what can you bring me up to speed on where we are financially for this fiscal year?
As far as I know right now, we have a negotiating team. Of course, our appropriations people go over and negotiate with the House and then the governor's people, and then they update us once, maybe twice a week on how those are going, what we think we can live with, what we can't, and back and forth like that. As far as what it's going to actually look like, I can't tell you that at this point in time. We do hope that we can keep common education as harmless as possible, because that is one of our core priorities of our state, what we need to take care of. And then again, also the Department of Corrections is another one, our public safety issues. And we just a couple of weeks ago passed the supplemental for Common Ed, $51 million, and for DOC $27.5, I believe, just so they can make it out this year. Now, depending on where you're looking at the figures, and I'm not sure what they're basing it on, but I've heard the figure that education could be looking at a 5% cut, and what I don't know at this point in time is that on the end of what they've already cut, or back before the revenue phase.
Right. So basically, that 5% cut would have been based on maybe what they were budgeted for last year at the beginning, possibly.
You would hope that would be it, but there again, I can't honestly answer that at this point in time.
And is that, I mean, I think a lot of people came in this year thinking, you know what, every year if we follow the legislature, we realize that you guys get in there, you debate, you talk about the budget, you know there's going to be a lot of hands wringing, and it doesn't get solved until 2 days before you guys adjourn. This year they saw the crisis and they thought, well, since there's so many different things that people are looking at, get rid of this tax credit, let's adjust Medicaid, let's do X, Y, Z, that we would see some more substantive pieces of legislation that had already passed that might have solved part of the budget picture at a time. Was that unrealistic to expect that to happen?
I don't think so. I think that our leadership has been looking prior to session starting, have started discussions with the House and the governor's office on what this is going to look like. And of course, the tax cut that was triggered back in December, I kind of wish they'd have waited till February to have done that.
Sure.
Because you'd been looking at about $150 million. And there are some suggestions out there that possibly we could go back and revisit that. Now, I don't know for sure, because your revenue increasing measure is supposed to originate in the House of Representatives. And I'm not sure how that is going to work out, or if they're even strongly considering that or not. But then you have the unclaimed property fund with the Treasurer's Office. I think that there's some possibilities that some of that could be tapped, because not everybody gets to claim that. And I think our current treasurer has done a pretty good job of notification and having information available so people can check that out to see if they do have some funds in that. But that and there's some other, I think, things that they're looking at in the revolving funds and trying to bring in to prop up the budget. So.
You're also, though, looking at, and Representative Dennis Johnson of Duncan had visited with us a couple of 3 weeks ago about some of the things they're looking at in terms of kind of rethinking the tax structure overall in Oklahoma. I know a recent bill was passed on their side regarding internet sales taxes. So those things, are they, as a Republican, talking about here we're going to tax this or tax that, sometimes that kind of goes against what the you guys ran on.
Well, it's kind of unique in a sense that, and we dealt with this when we have garage sales and things, because you self-tax.
Sure, right.
But if I understood the numbers correctly, it's about 4 to 6 people actually will pay the taxes on an internet sale that they get. And so there's a, that could be the answer. And I think that there are other states that do that, and they will send you what your tax would be on a particular item that you purchase over the internet. If you were like in a state, I believe it's like California, and there's a few more that tax internet sales. But that's, you might say, kind of above my head in technology and how they're going to connect those pieces. I actually couldn't tell you how they would do that.
Right.
But
one of the other things that had come up was talking about Medicaid and some of that really caused quite a bit of some consternation, I'm sure.
Right, David. It was kind of a scare last week. We were given a briefing by Nico Gomez, the director of the Oklahoma Hospital Authority, and he did this, I think, just to establish a timeline, in that he said that we could realize as much as a 25% cut on Medicaid for reimbursement. And what I didn't understand at the time, of course, I started getting calls from several constituents on it, was that hospitals would get reimbursed like 82%, but your nursing homes would only get reimbursed like 52%. Did I say 82 the first time? And the nursing homes, 52%. Right. And if they take, that could be, I think we might be shutting down probably 99% of the nursing homes in the state of Oklahoma. Of course, my district has really suffered under the things that's been happening with some of the cuts, and for instance, the hospital over at Frederick. They had to close the operations down on the hospital, and now it's just a nursing home care type facility. I understand Jefferson County Hospital is starting to feel the brunt of the pain on the resources, and so it's interesting. I have a good friend out of Tulsa that said, hey, we want to keep your rural hospitals vibrant and able to provide care to the people in the rural areas, because if you don't have it, then they're putting a load on our facilities in the metropolitan areas, and so really we like for you guys to keep those facilities open so that you can take care of the not the major issue, because you're going to direct them to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, right?
Can you tell me a little bit about where we are with the situation with Medicaid now, though? I mean, we're going forward, has that kind of been settled, or is that still something that you got to work on over the next 3 or 4 weeks?
It's not really settled. I just, from what I've heard, and haven't been briefed on that as of late, but from what I've heard, it's not going to be 25%. Now, it's probably going to be 10 or maybe a little over 10%, but we can probably live with that and make some adjustments with that, hopefully, and we'll just have to see what happens. So.
What happens now over the next month and a half of the session? Do you anticipate probably going down to the wire in terms of being able to get all of these pieces together? Because it's one thing to come up with a budget bill. Like last year, for example, let's take that. You had a $600 million hole to deal with. Basically, that was propped up by 2 large sources. With the rainy day,
rainy day fund,
kind of helped out that one. I mean, you did make other cuts throughout. It's not going to be this simple of a fix, right, for this time?
We've already tapped the rainy day once for the supplemental for education and DOC. And we'll tap it again for this year's budget. That'll be part of the budget picture, I believe. And to prop it up, but there's still going to have to be some cuts, and they're not going to be popular no matter what, because there's a lot of things out there that providing service to our people that they've come to expect. And they are important to them, and so we'll just have to address those issues. It's not going to be a popular year for budget, but sometimes you just have to realize you have to take care of what the priority issues are, and make the least amount of cuts as you can in other areas. But
Governor Fallon mentioned the other day the reason why she thought some people were dragging their feet on it a little bit is they wanted to get on the other side to find out if they were going to have an opponent. Some of the lawmakers, whether they wanted, she kind of fired a shot. Didn't she?
Well, I'm glad she did that because I always felt like if you did the right thing, you don't have anything to worry about. If you're not doing the right thing, you don't need to be up there in the first place. Right. So just go do your work, and and I think next week is the filing period since we've moved back into April, and that'll be interesting because usually it does draw quite a big crowd up there. Right. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see the opponents. Like I had an individual ask me, he said, "Hey, have you heard anybody was going to run against me?" And I started kind of chuckling, and he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, Not in a year like this. Who would want to do that?"
Right.
But, right. But,
and whenever we talk about people running for re-election, term limits, are in, and they knock some people out. We had that situation with the House the last go-round, with the session, not this past year, but the previous year, 3 people that would replace. Senate side, same thing is going to happen. Talk a little bit about term limits. It's impacting you. It's impacting Senator Bass.
Well, now Senator Bass has 2 more years.
Okay.
He
filled
the
remaining term
for Senator Maddox.
Right.
And so he has 2 more years to go on this. But there were 8 of us that came in together, and of course I was telling you that Senator Lamb ran for lieutenant governor and won that, and so that dropped out. But then Senator Bingman came over from the House, put us back to 8. But then we have Jim Halligan, the senator out of Stillwater and Payne County, that is decided that he's not going to run next time, and just really a gentleman. I've really enjoyed working with him, and then there's 3 on the other side, I believe, Senator Paddock, Senator Garrison, Senator Wyrick. On the Democratic side, and they've really been great people to work with. In fact, Senator Garrison and I have a pretty good relationship and kind of cut up and joke with one another. Great guy from Muskogee. And but we realize that it's time, and the way that I guess technology and things change in the world today. 12 years, you need younger people coming on board that can replace some of those older guys and gals that are going out, because our brain cells might not be functioning like they were at one time. We might be used up by now. So.
Well, we do appreciate your service in the state Senate. We're glad that we were able to have you up there pulling for Southwest Oklahoma for all these many years. Yeah. And I know you got a lot of work still to do before you ride off into the sunset. We appreciate you taking the time to fill us in on the budget process, and I hope we'll be in contact with you between now and the end of the session.
You're welcome. Thanks, David.
Senator Don Barrington's been our guest. And we welcome back our old friend Joe Dorman to the studio tonight. We're going to continue our conversation with politics, and Joe, of course, is a longtime state representative out of Rush Springs, a Democrat in the state House, but out of politics now, but not out of politics entirely in terms of interest in it. So we definitely wanted to bring you back and get your opinion on what's going on with the things at the state capitol. The budget crisis has been going on for quite some time. Give me your take on what's going on. You had to deal through some pretty difficult budget years in your days at the legislature. Nothing compared to this, though.
That's true. During my 12 years, we had 2 different shortfalls where we saw the budget reduced significantly. The first time around, it wasn't major enough where we couldn't shore up things with the rainy day fund. Second time around, we were fortunately had the benefit of receiving stimulus dollars from the federal government, and tying that with the rainy day fund, it helped us get by without the major cuts. But this time around, the legislature, it's just an awful time to be there, because they're facing a $1.3 billion shortfall, and that's added on top of $188 million 2 years ago, $611 million last year. It just keeps growing, and it looks grim.
A lot of it was kind of out of the control of lawmakers to some degree, because whenever you do connect with oil and gas and that revenue stream, nobody could project how far bottomed out that was going to be. We've talked to other lawmakers earlier about you kind of project a low for that sometime whenever you're building the budget, but nobody forecasted a low to be this big.
No.
But however, there are some other things that some of your colleagues that are Democrats in the legislature now point to the Republican leadership over some policies that have happened in the past that also contributed to it. One of them is the income tax. To talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the other things that you see maybe that might have been endemic to some of the Republican policies.
Well, a lot of this was created by their own actions. Of course, we saw a couple of years ago the big tax break given to the oil and gas industry that reduced the tax rate from 7% to 2%. That was at $100 a barrel. And then a couple of years later, we, of course, face what we're seeing now. And you can argue that break would help in this time with the industry to make sure those jobs are still there. But it was ridiculous to pass that rate down to such a low level when it was at $100 a barrel. And then you add on in that bill was language that allowed for a tax credit for underperforming wells. And that's in law right now. So it's a double whammy. We're giving a tax credit for for the wells that aren't producing, and the tax rate is such at a low level. You also had the income tax cut, which has been cut significantly. It's about $150 million per quarter percent, and we could look at a 1.5% that's been reduced during the Henry administration, during the Fallon administration. And then you've got the other issues with tax credits being issued to the different corporations. We had the discussion in the newspaper this last week about the tax credit the Thunder received.
Right.
Different organizations, you can argue they don't really need that break, but it's just money going out from the coffers.
And at the time that those things come in, though, whenever people talk about tax credits, it's pitched as you need this as an economic stimulus to bring them in. So I don't remember hearing a lot of negativity toward the credits as they were proposed at the time, but now you're coming back and seeing the effects. Is that fair to come back and criticize a credit that at the time that it was passed, most people thought, well, it's a good idea because you're trying to improve the economy of Oklahoma?
And that's why there needs to be a review regularly on these. And the economic development directors obviously want to have something in place where they can use that as an attraction to bring in the businesses, the major corporations. But there has to be some type of regular review to see if it's generating the benefit of what you want to see from that.
Right.
If there's one that's just continued on just because it's been there, then certainly they need to rethink that. And the shoring up the budget to make sure we have the money for education,
right,
for health care opportunities. That's another thing. We're leaving billions of dollars on the table by not taking the Medicaid expansion, or at least looking at a revised plan, as Governor Fallon and I both proposed
right,
during the campaign, looking at different ways to take in that federal money.
What are you hearing about that Medicaid proposal? The health care authority is proposing the 25 cut in reimbursement. There's also another alternative plan out there that has a cigarette tax that might be able to help shore up Medicaid. Well, what's your sense from the outside now looking in terms of what some of the options are out there for that?
There are so many moving parts with the legislation, and the idea that was presented by Nico Gomez. It's a valiant effort, but it's going to be very difficult to implement that. You're looking at a 25% cut on the reimbursement. Our nursing homes, mark my words, almost every single nursing home in the state will shut down if that goes through the way it is. There is a crisis at the Capitol, and they need to take action to preserve that, because we have far too many people that are going to suffer, and some will die as a result of the actions of what the legislature will or will not do.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about why the pace of this is still slow. Is that because of the nature of the way the business just happens to work at the state capitol? This is something you and I had talked about before, that it seemed like every year the budget, of course, is something that has to be taken care of, and it's almost always pushed to the last couple of weeks of the session. This year, giving so many other elements that are involved there, I think there was an optimism that you would walk into it and maybe this thing would get tackled earlier in the session, and yet it looks like we're going to come up to the middle of May before they get anything. Am I complaining about something I shouldn't complain about because I don't know any better because I haven't been inside the Capitol? You tell me.
It happens that way every single year. It's always pushed to the end.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because that is the critical function the legislature should address and must address every year. We're hearing rumors they may even go into a special session because they cannot reach agreement between the House and the Senate and the governor. And that's not good for anyone. You're spending $100,000 a week extra during a special session. So you've got to sit down, make those tough decisions, and that's part of the problem. It's an election year. A lot of these legislators don't want to make those tough decisions because they're going to anger a group of constituents no matter what they do. If they raise cigarette taxes, as has been proposed, that's going to make people mad. If they go through with the cuts and put in an additional provider fee, you're going to make certain people angry with that decision. So it's really a very tough spot to be in for them.
The governor came out with a proposal the other day in terms of issuing bonds as a way to help solve this budget crisis. Your reaction to that?
Well, you'd think I would attack my former opponent, but honestly, that is one of the things that needs to be on the table. You're looking at a bond issue to do road and bridge repairs. They did set aside that money for a guaranteed amount that would go into these repairs. It's in basically a fund. And if they need to shift that to shore up health care and shore up education, a bond for something like that is not, it's not out of means to consider.
It's coolly received, though, by Democrats and Republicans alike. Did that surprise you?
It didn't surprise me because it is election year politics, and there are a lot of people who are wanting to argue about the issue. It's amazing how when it gets down to the final hour, the 11th hour, where people will come around. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Democrats and Republicans will be able to reach some kind of consensus. But I do know how the Democratic leader operates. they want to see 51 Republican votes in the House, which is what it takes to pass something before the Democrats commit. It's unfortunate politics is played like that, but we need to see the Democrats and Republicans working together for a solution, especially this year.
You've mentioned the election year politics, how that comes into play, and even Governor Fallon had hinted that may be one of the reasons why they were kind of dragging their feet. People wanted to see, if the filing period came about, if they were going to have an opponent, in this year's election. You were commenting on all the filers that had gone in and thought it was a really good thing to see, and maybe quite a commentary on the state of politics in Oklahoma, given the makeup of the people who applied to file for state offices this year.
And I want to believe I had a little bit to do with that, because we really inspired a lot of people in 2014 to get involved in politics. And it was the individuals who were really looking for someone that would listen and champion their cause and be their voice. And over the 2 years, I've tried to develop that and keep people involved. And so I was very proud to see so many people file for office, a record turnout for legislative filings. And it's going to be interesting to see how many of those candidates do well in the campaign, how well their message is received on the doorsteps, and what goes forward with this. It's going to be an interesting November.
It's kind of quite a trickle down from the national level too. I mean, we see in the the whole outsider idea and how it's playing out in the presidential campaign, and so I think it is on another level is encouraging to see people reconnecting with their government after so many years of feeling like, well, the guys that are making the laws up there, they're disconnected from us. It's a different class of people. They're operating on their own, and now people are realizing that they can be part of the solution. Another issue that has come up that you've connected yourself with is medical marijuana, and you're all about it. Talk about that, the new push that they're doing this time, and maybe how it's differed from some of the ones in the past.
You would think the city council job in Rush Springs would keep me busy enough, but no, I had to get back involved in politics of that sort. In 2014, I had the chance to visit with a young lady named Brittany Hardy. She is the mother of a child who experienced severe epileptic seizures. And she was the cause for the CBD oil bill to be considered by the legislature, a bipartisan effort between myself and Representative Eccles, to allow children to have the opportunity to use that oil with low levels of THC. That really got me looking into the issue and studying it more. And I've had people through the years come up to me and say, medicinal marijuana was the only way they could adequately treat their cancer, whether it be for pain or to be able to keep food down with going through chemo treatments, whatever it might be, pain addiction, dealing with something other than a narcotic. As I studied it more, it just seemed to make more and more sense that we should allow doctors to have the ability to make these healthcare decisions for people rather than politicians and bureaucrats. If a doctor feels that is the best form of treatment and a healthcare plan, I think that should be on the table, and we should allow them to have the ability to present a plan. It's going to be regulated by the state health department, and it will create a 7% tax for the state to generate revenue to bring in for the state. 24 states have already passed some form of medicinal marijuana law. Pennsylvania, this last Sunday, was the most recent, and I hope Oklahoma would be at number 25.
I'm sure you consulted with doctors, in and around the area. Was there a general consensus, or was the opinion split whenever you talk to some people in the medical profession?
It's still split because there is such a stigma with marijuana. And in fact, I'm not in favor of full legalization. I do think it should be under the care of a doctor and used as a medical treatment. But there is a very wide variety of opinions out there. There's been quite a bit of research done. Individuals have looked into it, but you're still going to even find the medical community split on if it's the right approach. But the doctors who I have discussed this with, who are in favor of it, feel it will be of a benefit to Oklahomans.
And it is another petition drive?
It is.
And how does that work, and how does it differ with some of the other petition drives that we're seeing out there now?
It's currently going through the process of being reviewed by the Attorney General, and he has a period of time to approve it. Once it's approved, we'll have 90 days to collect the signatures. And this is far different than the previous medicinal marijuana petition and even the storm shelter petition I did in 2013. Those were both constitutional amendments. This is a statutory change. It will only take 66,000 signatures. The medicinal marijuana petition in 2014 collected 75,000. So I feel confident we will get there, and I think the language, I helped them write the language. This is going to be an option I think Oklahomans will like, and we've seen how many people have experienced cancer in their families' lives or some kind of medical issue where this will help them. I think we're going to see a surprise, and there will be a lot of people support this, and it'll receive favorable opinion on the vote.
All right. Well, we'll see how things turn out. We'll keep in touch with you as you get closer to the deadline to get those signatures. Always appreciate your time taking the visit with us.
Thank you.
Representative Joe Dorman, the former lawmaker from Rush Springs, has been our guest. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time.
If you have a topic or issue you'd like us to focus on, please write to the address on your screen or fax us at 357-3811. Or you can email us.